Yeah, and I also hear the it's too high and the like fucking like buzzing sound in the background. It went completely dead. I honestly don't want to look at the comments either because people can either be like, "Oh, it's a good job," or "fucking ruthless."
Well, it's neither of those. There's no comments because no one has rewatched them.
Oh, okay. I just haven't looked.
I think one video has one comment where someone was, I could tell they're slightly irritated because I reviewed a whiskey that they obviously liked and I wasn't as happy about it. So like they weren't super mean, but I could immediately tell they're, just by their tone, they're like pissed off. I was like, well, I expected that, I guess.
It's utterly astounding how many people hate watch stuff.
In our case, it's just someone going to search like that particular whiskey to find reviews. They weren't super mean about it, but I could tell they were annoyed. It's like barely big enough to write with.
I would never space my letters out that much, but okay.
Well, it doesn't have to be you writing it.
I honestly forgot about it, and you didn't text me a part of it, and then text me another movie, and so I watched that one.
Yeah, that's fine. We didn't have to specifically. I'll probably talk about Godzilla. I didn't have a whole lot to say about it, which is why I picked another movie. So if I pre-draw this and think about it first, then I'll get the most out of it. The last few times I've done it is like, can't even tell what I put on there. So I got a lapel mic to try for the booze review. It just like sounds like I'm underwater or something almost. Crap. Got a different one to try, I guess. Because I'm tired of trying to hobble together that stool with the microphone on it. Welcome to the Desert Lair, episode 9. I'm Dustin, a functional misanthrope. Dillon's here. He's a mostly functional nerd. The movie we picked to talk about this week, Godzilla -1. I didn't know if we quite had enough to talk about, so I picked a different movie, Howard the Duck. We'll talk about that. Get into the news first, though. Jump right in. They're making another Happy Gilmore 2.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Do you like the Adam Sandler comedies?
I mean, they're okay. I mean, when Happy Gilmore came out and I watched it for the first time, I enjoyed it. I mean, it wasn't terrible.
I don't know. It's been a long time since I watched those movies. I mean, I'll say this about Happy Gilmore. It has one of the best comedic scenes with Bob Barker. It's just straight comedic gold. Bob Barker is awesome in that scene. And it's one of the best lines. The price is wrong, bitch. I love that. And of course, Bob Barker trained with Chuck Norris, so he can actually fight.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. He trained with Chuck Norris. There's an interview with him, and they're like, we have a stunt man to do this fighting. Don't worry about it. And he's like, no, I can fight. I'll do it myself. The only thing he didn't do is like, I didn't roll down the hill, that part. He's like, but the stunt man hurt his back. So he's like, I'm glad I left it to him. There's another sequence where he fights Adam Sandler. So they're doing some kind of charity thing for autism, and it's Bob Barker, and he's like laying in a hospital bed.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
Bob Barker's laying in this hospital bed, and he's sitting next to Adam Sandler, who, I mean, he has the hockey outfit on, but he's playing Adam Sandler, and Bob Barker just starts talking shit, and finally Adam Sandler gets pissed off and like just hits him, and so they go into this whole fighting scene again. It's pretty awesome. You should look it up. Bob Barker dumps a bedpan full of piss on him.
Oh my God.
And then it pans to the next scene, and it's a few months later, and they're both dead. They're like having a memorial for him. They give the applause, and the applause is like bigger for Adam Sandler, and he's like, "Oh, see, Bobby, and they like me a little more." And he's like, "They're applauding because you're dead."
Oh my God.
It's pretty awesome. You should watch it. Unfortunately, obviously, Bob Barker can't be in the next movie, which is a crying shame. You know, the Adam Sandler movies, here's the thing. Sometimes lowbrow, bottom-of-the-barrel comedy is funny. I don't have any problems with it. If it's funny, whatever. But I haven't watched one of those movies in a long, long time, so.
Yeah, I haven't watched any Adam Sandler movie in a long time either.
The other thing, when they were interviewing Bob Barker, he said everybody in the world wanted to ask him about that movie. And he said, especially the young men, and they always were asking him, like, could you really whip Adam Sandler in a fight? And he's like, Adam Sandler couldn't whip Regis Philbin. Bob Barker's great. I think that's all I had for news. There wasn't a whole lot I saw interesting. Did you see anything interesting?
Assassin's Creed Shadows finally came out, and like I thought, it was just perfectly mid. It's not anything great, anything like horrible. It's just I saw this article about some guy saying, I know now that Ubisoft will never release a great RPG. It's more they're just like the average ones that what determines if it's good enough or if it's not good enough. The Ubisoft RPGs are just the perfect middle of like average. And it should just be the benchmark for absolute
Is it better
shit.
than?
Yeah. Is it absolute shit or is it actually a good RPG? I was just like, wow.
It's the benchmark for average. Man, that's I don't know if that's a very flattering comparison, but
At this point, I'm too invested in the story to not play it. But I mean, I'm not as invested as like 100% completionist after Valhalla. I don't think I'll ever do that to Assassin's Creed ever again. That was the most bloat heavy game of useless crap they give you to do I've ever played in a game. Or at least in great RPGs, a lot of the side stuff is interesting. They put just as much as love and care in a random side quest as they do the main story. Even just random activities or like because it's so good, you can look past it being a little mundane or
well, that's part of the problem that a lot of these the sandbox games became super popular, and instead of populating them with stuff that's actually interesting, it's literally just fluff. It's a bunch of extra content to keep you playing, but it's like, why do any of this stuff?
I'm just going to wait till Assassin's Creed Shadows goes on a huge sale and then play the story and that's it. Just to still follow it.
I mean, they were interesting enough that you played basically all of them, more or less, right? Or all the main series ones.
Yeah, all the ones on PC. The main games we played for the story.
Maybe it's just getting a little long in the tooth at this point. They're doing new things with it. They're putting it in new settings, but there's only so many ways and times you can sneak around to base camps and kill enemies, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like the Ubisoft special between Far Cry and all the other games. It just feels like, yeah, how many times can you make a base in enemies and you got to kill everyone and then capture it? The other news I saw was really interesting was the United Nations sent a message to Arrowhead, which is the people who make Helldivers 2, about making a talk about psychological manipulation. Because in Helldivers 2, you're kind of like the grunt to the evil Supreme Earth or whatever, like Starship Troopers. They just throw bodies at.
Helldivers 2 is kind of based on that, right?
Yeah, that's what it is. And just when the United Nations wants a video game company to talk about psychological manipulation, it's like they show a perfect example of you being a Helldiver, making it like some honorable thing when you're pretty much cannon fodder and you're just there to advance Supreme Earth's agenda. And you make it seem like it's a glorious thing. The whole game is supposed to be ironic, but the fact that they do it so well, like a really good example of the fascist state, how they convince people to be our cannon fodder and go to a war that in the end means nothing.
If you're part of a fascist state, you probably don't have much choice. The bigger issue is that point before you get to a fascist state, before you've gone over that edge, when you still have a choice. It's something to think about. So, anything else?
That's it.
Before we get into the movie, I did watch Spiral 2021. This is a spin-off of the Saw franchise.
Oh, okay.
Did you watch any of the Saw movies?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I watched like the first couple, but after like the fourth one, I was like, this is getting insane.
Did you like those movies?
They were interesting, but I feel like you're almost glorifying being a serial killer.
My impression of those movies is that they were essentially gore porn, right? Like,
Oh, yeah, they were.
most of the people are watching those movies because they want to see the interesting ways that you kill people. I haven't watched those movies, or at least I don't think I have. Maybe I watched the first one, but if I have, I can't remember. I watched this one because it was a Black Friday one that I bought. Like, I'll check it out. Even though I kind of already knew, I was like, So this one stars Chris Rock. He's a detective, and it's like a copycat killer. This movie is awful. I mean, the writing is so bad in this movie. And they try to have Chris Rock being Chris Rock, like he's telling jokes. And the jokes are funny, but I'm like, it doesn't fit this movie at all, really. Like, the
comedy is not what I equate to horror serial killer type thing.
There can be some campiness in it, you know what I mean? But it's not really that campy, and they try and play the whole movie serious, and then putting Chris Rock in there doesn't work. But again, the writing is just bad. And not the funny kind of bad, the stupid kind of bad. It's a serial killer and he's killing police officers in a police station. Like, it's just completely stupid. On top of it, they also had Samuel L. Jackson in this movie. And I'm like, man, they just spent a lot of money on these people and wasted it because this movie is god awful. It was generally a waste of time. Score-wise, 1.5 out of 5, I'd say.
Utter garbage.
I mean, it wasn't the worst movie I've ever watched, but yeah, it was bad. That's all I really have to say about that one. The next movie we were going to watch, but I was like, I don't know if we have enough to talk about. Probably should have made you watch it anyway, but I didn't think about it. Godzilla -1, 2023. This movie is directed by Takashi Yamazaki. He's kind of known for making the Japanese blockbusters. Like, people call him like the Japanese James Cameron. He's directed a few different anime and manga adaptations. Lots of special effects heavy type movies. This movie, visually, it looks good. It's the first non-English film to win an Academy Award for special effects.
Oh, okay.
So that's a pretty big achievement. In addition to that, not only did it win an Academy Award for special effects, the budget for it was 10 to 15 million.
That's it?
Exactly. So if you think about that, the other legendary Pictures Godzilla movie from 2014, so 9 years earlier, the budget for that movie, $160 million.
Yeah, that's a little more like what it would be.
Yeah, so this movie, 9 years after that movie, had a budget 10 times less. It's a pretty big accomplishment. They were able to win an Academy Award for special effects on a budget that was that low, comparatively. Now, personally, I don't think this movie looks as good as the 2014 movie, but again, they spent 10 times the amount of money. So it would be really interesting to see a comparison of where they spent money and where all the money goes. And I'd like to see a breakdown of everything that they spend money on in a movie. Again, it won an Academy Award for special effects. I still don't think Japan makes blockbuster movies like Hollywood does. If you're trying to compare it to a Marvel movie or something, it's obvious there's a lot more money that they spent on a Marvel movie than this. From a visual standpoint, I don't have any complaints about this, but nothing about it really stood out. Godzilla looks, he looks okay, I guess. He looks more scary at the beginning of the movie. Before he's transformed by the nuclear testing, he's maybe the size of a T-Rex, and it's the nuclear bomb that makes him grow. But at the beginning of this movie, he's like super agile and moving around. He's more on a human level. It's not just like a building that's going to step on you. It's a T-Rex sized monster that can eat you and throw you around and stuff. The one thing I don't like about the Godzilla in this movie is that he has this stand-up pose. He's just super erect, and it looks kind of weird, like his chest is puffed out kind of. Just seems unnatural. This movie was universally loved by critics. They essentially call it the best Godzilla movie. I guess I could roll with that.
I'm honestly surprised how many times they've adapted Godzilla to a movie.
I think it's the longest running movie franchise in history.
Mm.
The international community really liked it, but the Japanese critics didn't, like, it wasn't universally loved in Japan. They have a different perspective being Japanese and living in Japan. I think some of the criticism from Japan was that there was some nationalistic undertones to it. The international community really liked it. Japan, it was more mixed. So I thought that was kind of interesting. This one is, unlike some of the other movies, more of a human-based story. The main character is this kamikaze pilot. It's about survivor's guilt and how he survived and he didn't do his duty. The only complaint I think I have about it is that it has that super hammy soap opera style acting. Like, this, it's something that happens in a lot of these Japanese movies. It works in the context of a Godzilla movie, I think, but it does kind of detract from the movie a little bit. All the themes still get across, but I would say that's the major complaint that I had with it. I'll give it a score. I think it's a good movie. I think it accomplishes what it sets out to do. It tells a really humanistic tale. They made a pretty good Godzilla movie. It was a good update to the original movie, but I don't know if it was for me exactly. The ending was a little bit of a cop-out, but whatever. I'll give this 3.5 out of 5. It's a slightly above average movie and definitely probably one of the better Godzilla movies. Moving on to the movie that I picked. So this is another one that I bought during Black Friday. Actually remember to bring the box up here. Howard the Duck from 1986. So it's based on a Marvel Comics character. I think this is the first movie that features a Marvel character. It's directed by Willard Huyck. It was actually produced by George Lucas. It had some money behind it. So in 1986, this movie cost between 30 to 37 million to make, is what Wikipedia says, which in 1986, like this had to have been one of the most expensive movies to make that year. The box office was 38 million, so it was a complete flop essentially because whatever the advertising budget is, they lost all of that. This movie was a flop, and not only was it a flop in theaters, critics also hated it as well. It was nominated for Razzie Awards a few times. We'll start with the visuals of this movie. It was shot on film in the 80s. The restoration, the transfer to 4K, it looks good. I like a lot of the outdoor city scenes at night. Neon lights look really good. I really liked the opening scene with the trench coat and the jazz music and stuff, so that kind of Norrish feel. And then I liked all the detail and all the duck stuff, all the puns and the Indiana Jones and all the commercials they did, and
Rolling egg instead of rolling stone.
yeah, I mean, that was really neat. They spent a lot of time working on all the details of that. That was pretty cool. One of the best parts of the movie, I think. Play Duck magazine was pretty cool. The costume. What did you think about the costume?
I have to remember it was in 1986, and there's a certain quality that 30 and 40 years later is just not going to be the same. So what the standard was compared to what it actually was for the time period.
So what I'm getting from this, what it sounds like you're telling me is you didn't think it was very good.
No, it was not very good. But I just, obviously technology is advanced in every way, like and everything. So it's obviously it's going to be better, but it's just, personally, I did not think it would look good. But again, it's just, I can't really compare it to other things during the same time.
Yeah, that's fair. Is this one of the first furry costumes at this point in time? I'll agree with you to an extent. So the costume looks fake. I mean, it obviously doesn't really look much like an anthropomorphic duck. The exception to that, I think, is the beak and the eyes. Specifically the beak. I think they did actually a really good job with the beak and the eyes. This costume, the beak and the eyes are animatronic. They literally had the actor wear a battery pack to power the beak and the eyes, and they had a team of 4 puppeteers controlling the beak flapping and the eyes and all the animatronics of this just animatronic head while the actor wore the thing. From a technical standpoint, to me, that's really neat. It's pretty crazy. They had 4 people, and in the special features, which are probably better than the movie itself, they talk about a lot of the puppeteering and stuff. And yeah, I mean, you basically have to be a master at the craft to use the controls to control beak flaps with the coordination between 4 different people.
Yeah, I thought that part was very good.
The actress, Leah Thompson, she was saying that they'd run into problems, like an airplane would go by, or the beak would start going out of control, the eyes would start going crazy, and like, oh, someone's using their garage door opener next to the set.
Oh, God.
It's interesting how much went into making this costume in this movie. Originally, I think they were going to have him try and talk through the costume, and I don't know if they were going to use his voice or not, but maybe just so people could talk back to him and they could act around his speaking, but they just decided like it's too muffled and no one can understand what you're saying. So they tried a whole bunch of different voice actors. Robin Williams actually worked on it for like a week before he quit because he's like, I can't match to the beak flapping. Got frustrated, I think. The voice acting, to me, at least to the beak flaps, is actually pretty good. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's good enough that I believed it throughout most of the movie, more or less.
Yeah, I thought that aspect was good.
Even though the costume looks cheesy overall, I still kind of believed him as a character. Probably just because the voice acting and the beak flaps were pretty good. I think that helped it out. They do have a few other duck costumes in this right at the very beginning because he's in Duck World. And I think they had to design all the set pieces to scale to fit the ducks and stuff. I do feel like we should talk about the duck boobs.
I would just glossed over that. I'm just going to move past this part.
So it is interesting. I think they were asking one of the producers, is this supposed to be a movie for children? Is it supposed to be a movie for adults? Do we really need to glue tits on a duck? I mean, I think it's funny. I think it kind of works in the context of this movie, but it is a little bizarre, I feel like. And I think they show the duck tits in the centerfold too. I don't remember exactly, but these duck tits are just kind of weird, kind of fetishy weird. I don't know. Also, visually, the Dark Lord monster.
The special effects were terrible, but I mean, again, it was the 80s, so.
Nowadays, they do look out of place, but I still think it looks pretty good in the context of the movie and what they did with it. And they managed to kind of integrate it with the movie fairly well. You can tell it looks like a model that they're moving with stop motion. It looks out of place, I'll say that. Regardless, though, the amount of work that goes into filming that model is insane. For them to build that model and shoot all those scenes with that model is pretty crazy. It kind of sucks because when you put all your heart and soul, when you spend this amount of effort and this amount of work on a movie, pour your blood, sweat, tears into it, and then you see reviews where people are like, this is the worst movie ever. So I understand that element of it. It's one thing if you just act in a shitty movie, it was written poorly, but when you spent this much effort to make something like this and then it's shitty, it hurts a little bit more, I think. It hurts a lot more, right? I kind of felt for the actors and everybody involved in this movie. Leah Thompson, she wasn't actually a singer, so she spent all of her weekends learning how to sing, like taking singing lessons and stuff. Frankly, I think she sounds great. To me, she sounds like a singer. They said they were threatening her. They didn't know whether they're going to use her voice or not, and maybe they're going to use it, maybe they weren't, but obviously they ended up using it. I think she did a fantastic job.
I didn't know it was her. I honestly thought they just got an actor and made her mouth move in and used different voices like they do in some others.
Yeah, so I mean, she did an incredible job, especially considering she started out the movie not knowing how to sing and then learned to sing. She said in order to get the part for the audition, she went to a bunch of thrift stores to try and find clothes to make her look like a cross between Madonna and Cyndi Lauper. Her hair in this movie is the most 80s thing ever.
Yeah, definitely. So when I saw that, I was like, this just screams the 80s.
Yeah, it's like, if you can find one thing in this movie that was 80s, her hair is like the most 80s hair. And she actually said that she wished she wore a wig because it took her like 2+ hours a day to do her hair. And I'm like, I believe it, man. Her hair looks fucking amazing in this movie. I'm glad she didn't decide to wear a wig because it probably wouldn't have looked as good. But she's like, ugh, the hair. Also, the flying scene in the flyer, they actually had to have the actors fly that thing. Maybe not for all the stunts. I think they basically said it was almost another movie production to film that flyer scene.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting with like the way they did it. I mean, there's slightly parts where I could tell where it's just like
Blue screen behind them.
Yeah, and very like stiff in the way it flew.
But the majority of that is them actually flying that thing. Now, the plot point to get there is...
Yeah, I'm glad we spent so much time on the special effects part because the story was awful to me. Absolutely awful. How certain steps happen, how you meet the one person you decide to help, just happens to be friends with the guy he works for, the very people that brought you here in the first place. The coincidence was just absolutely soap opera level ridiculous. I was just like, right, because that makes a leap. And then just like the way certain people's reactions are to him, it's like you literally see a beast man type thing like Duck. And some people's reaction when you went to that job agency, the people who like find you a job.
That is my favorite scene in this entire movie, and that lady is my favorite character.
Just like she has seen so many weirdos and so many like people who are just not normal. That it's just she doesn't even blink when she sees like a real beast person. Like she doesn't even blink. She's like, "This is normal to me." Like that whole part was just I was dying. I was like.
That is literally the most awesome scene in this movie. I love that scene. Her attitude is like, you will find a job.
It's like, I don't care how much of a freak or like, different you are from other people. I will find you. Like, they send me people like you to me for a reason. I'm that good at my job.
I loved that. Her personality is so great. That was easily my favorite scene in this entire movie. Everyone else's reaction to him is kind of, some people are like, this is an amazing costume, and some people scream and freak out. At a certain point, you see this thing walking down the street, and you're like, whatever. They just kind of ignored at that point, I feel like.
And then they get to the diner scene where it's just like, now you got the villagers and the pitchforks level of, we have to kill this thing immediately. Like,
the name of that diner is Cajun Sushi. Did you notice that?
yeah, they like put like a random sticker over their name to like, we gotta change the name because obviously isn't working. So instead of redoing the sign, we'll just put a sticker over it. Like, no problem.
I was super confused because like Cajun Sushi is like, what? First of all, it makes no sense whatsoever. And then they go into it. I'm like, this is a diner.
Their uniforms that they're wearing are just utterly ridiculous. Please just call the fashion police. Jesus Christ.
Some of those scenes are hilariously bad in there. And then the acting, the Dark Overlord, is just so hammy. And but a lot of the special effects, I think Leah Thompson said they spent like a month in that diner because making all the stuff blow up. So that's one of the things they did with just traditional special effects. So light and magic. They spent a lot of time and money with a lot of special effects people and stuff on that. And then you see them, like, the shot where all the tables and stuff, he shoots them across the wall. They literally do that by having a set that's tilted at like a 45-degree angle. And so you see people working on the set. They're trying to like slowly slide down this hill of a set they built. Do you want to talk about the love scene in this movie?
Oh, God. After we got done talking about The Shape of Water, I thought it would be another weird-ass sex scene. And yet again, it just got super weird again.
Hey, there was no actual sex in this movie. It is not a sex scene.
I feel like that's debatable, but I mean, what you consider as the sex scene?
There was no nudity. They didn't actually have sex.
That type of scene would not be in a kid's movie.
I actually kind of like the scene. It's a little bit funny because he starts out trying to convince her, and then he succeeds, and then he gets in trouble because he's bit off more than he could chew, because then she's like, okay, and he's like, wait a minute, no. So that part I did think was kind of funny. Also, his feathers standing up on his head, the director said it took them months to get that to work correctly.
Wow, that's surprising.
They had to like specially build the animatronics to actually get the feathers to go erect. I don't know exactly how sex between a duck and a human would work, considering I'm pretty sure ducks have like corkscrew penises.
No idea.
I'm not quite sure what the logistics of that are. I don't feel like a duck would have a normal penis just because he's evolved to be...
There's a point in the movie where they show the evolution from being a monkey to a man, and they re-envision it as like a duck,
yeah.
to a duck man or whatever. So like,
yeah, I still don't think that makes you grow a normal penis that would work on a human. Whatever.
I don't know.
In any event, I still thought the scene was pretty funny. It made me laugh. I did also laugh because Leah Thompson, so she played in Back to the Future. She was...
His mother?
His mother. In the special features of the interview, she's like, it was kind of a weird couple of years for me because first I'm playing a girl who's in love with her son, and then I'm playing a girl who's in love with a duck. So she's like, it was a little... it was kind of a weird couple of years. They did originally cast a child actor, like a 12-year-old, to play the role. And she said it was kind of hard at first to try and imagine herself playing someone who's supposed to be in love with a duck when she knew there was a child essentially in there. So it worked better when they got a little person actor. She also has a sign in the kitchen that says housework is a bitch. I don't know if you noticed that.
No, I guess I didn't notice that part.
The other thing I kind of wanted to talk about is the attempted rape scene at the beginning of this movie is kind of like, ugh. Remember where he helps her?
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I didn't really feel great about that. Like maybe they could have mugged her. Or, I don't know. Like, did we need to have kind of like an attempted rape at the beginning of this movie? And then I felt like, shouldn't we maybe call the police after this and notify the authorities? We beat them up and they run off so they can go and
Do it again,
yeah,
presumably.
mug rape the next person. Like, wasn't super thrilled about that. Anything else you want to talk about with this movie? Any other scenes?
Not in this movie in particular, but in Guardians of the Galaxy, they have a Howard the Duck. It looks completely different.
I think it's a post-credit scene in one of the movies.
Yeah.
There's like drinking a margarita or something.
Mm-hmm.
I think the actual Marvel Comics character is a lot more rude and bitter. And in this movie, I think they specifically wanted to make him more likable. They kind of changed around his persona a little bit for this movie, I think. Anything else?
Not really, no.
Scores? So I guess...
You go first.
Yeah, I'll go first. So for me, listen, the writing in this movie is pretty bad. I think that's the primary issue with this movie is the writing. The writing is terrible. And some of the acting is bad too, but I'm not 100% sure the problem is the acting, or rather the actors. I think the problem is just the script is so terrible. There's no way you could have acted this in a way that was good. Some of it kind of made me laugh with the Dark Overlord. Overall, the movie is just like the writing is so bad in this. Other than the one scene where he's in the unemployment office, and that one is genuinely hilarious. I really liked that scene. On the flip side of that, though, I like so much of the production, just watching those special features and stuff. And like, I know that's not actually part of the movie, but it gave me a different appreciation for this movie of how much went into making it. The costumes, the puppeteers who had to control the thing. I think the actor inside the costume could barely see. So like, he rehearsed scenes where he would walk backwards because he couldn't see, so that he could figure out where he needed to walk forward without seeing. Just the amount of work that went into the production kind of balances out the terrible writing in this movie. I'm going to give this movie 3 out of 5.
I'm going to do a 2.5 because I kind of hold higher weight on the story and the plot of a movie.
Yeah, that's fair.
But like you said, I do really appreciate what went into the special effects, especially in the 80s, how a lot of stuff they had to do and how much they put in, like the effort they put into with the actors and all the other stuff. But yeah, it's just this plot is just like honestly, a movie could have a really good plot and like acting and writing and then just have very minimal special effects, and I probably like the movie more than the opposite. So
yeah, I mean, it really is a shame that they spent $35 million or whatever in the 80s, and they put all this time and effort into this movie, and it's a shit movie, really. It's not very good. So that part of it kind of sucks. They put so much of their heart and soul in this movie, and it's just bad. It's a bad movie. It has a cult following, which is not surprising.
I was going to say, movies that have been whole degrees of worse than this have cult followings. So, I mean, it doesn't surprise me.
I can see why people like this because it's kind of a fun movie in a lot of ways, but it's not so bad that it's good, and it's just not good. Anything else?
No.
I have not picked a movie for next week, so I guess we'll have to figure it out.
Okay.
All right, later, man.
Yep.
I've watched this movie before, but it probably literally when I was a child, I think. It's probably the last time I watched it. Had you ever seen this before? I doubt it, right?
No, I didn't know this movie existed before you told me.
I want to watch all those movies, but the problem is they have tie-in like TV universe stuff that I also need to watch, so it's probably going to be a while before I get around to all those, because of course I have to watch them in chronological order because I'm neurotic like that, so like I need to have the entire thing so I can watch it.
Part I was most disappointed as far as like games or movies was like spoiling the plot was Red Dead Redemption. The entirety of the plot of Red Dead Redemption 2 is spoiled because you made the sequel first. Like, that shit drove me insane. I'm like, I already know this is gonna happen to this person. I already know it's gonna happen to this person. It's like,
well, I couldn't get through those games. I mean, I tried to play the prequel first, I guess, technically. That game looks really good. Like, it's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous looking game, but I was like, ugh, it's just not
mean, I played the first one all the way through.
Grand Theft Horse didn't work for me.
Yeah.
I wanted to like it, but I was like, just the gameplay aspects of it didn't do it for me. I was actually thinking about Final Fantasy 16, even though I was not a fan of 15. Or really, I haven't liked any game in the series more or less since 10. But
One of the streamers I like to watch occasionally played the entire game in like a weekend or whatever. 10. I forgot that one of the side characters, his weapon is literally a ball. He like literally throws a dodgeball. Like, this is so sad. Like, what the fuck?
10, I think, is probably my favorite story, and just the overall tone of that game is real somber. I really like that. Plus, I think the soundtrack is the best in the whole series, which all those games have a really good soundtrack, but 10 was phenomenal.
You can't even drive as me because I drive too slow. Like,
I assume that I'll die in a car accident. That's probably the number one way that I'll die, but
honestly, if I got a call one day and they're like, yeah, you're in an accident, I'm like, okay, is he dead? I was like, I can only assume he's dead. You never went to fucking Samurai's Food Bank?
no.
I remember fucking me did more than once. I was like, Jesus Christ, this is not a field trip. This is volunteer work. Like,
Yeah, the only thing that they tried to do for volunteer work was have me write a card, and that obviously didn't work out too well. So we're gonna write cards to sick kids. And I'm like, no, I'm not. It's like, you're gonna do it. Alright. Fucking row. Life sucks and you die on a car.
yes, I fucking will.